What's up, everybody? It's the Digital World Podcast. Today, we got a lot of stuff to cover, and I want to start off with this article because it's really pertinent to what I've been talking about, especially about, the median income of the middle class. And when you look at it, it's it's not looking too pretty, to say the least. So, let's get right into this article. Here, we see that it says goodbye middle class. 50% of all US workers made $34,000 or less last year. 50%. That's an astonishing number. And remember when I calculated this and I said if the average middle class person is making around 36,000, and this is even less than that. So they have even less than what I initially calculated. He said they're living off of $3,000 a month, and that's before taxes. How are they supposed to pay for rent? Especially if you're living in a major city, in urban parts of states. There's no way. You're paying, well, it depends on the area, but let's say $2,000, right? For a pretty decent apartment. In other areas, it's a lot more expensive. So I'm trying to, just put out a reasonable number here. And after taxes, depending on the state they live in, I just don't know how you're able to afford without having like a roommate or something. And you have groceries to buy, you have gas to pay, and all those things are going up in price because of the energy crisis that we're seeing take place around the world and because of the policies that have been instituted by these politicians trying to get rid of fossil fuels and natural gas in order to bring in a green economy. And now people are struggling. And I titled this The Land of the Rich and the Peasants. And we're starting to transition into a time period such as were the times in the medieval era, where you only had the lords and the peasants. It says here, we keep going down this path, soon we won't have much of a middle class at all. When I first started writing about the economy many years ago, he wrote about the tens of millions of working poor Americans that were enduring so many hardships. But at this point, most of the nation now falls into the working poor category. This isn't because wages haven't been going up. Little by little, wages have been incrementally rising year after year. But meanwhile, the cost of living has been absolutely soaring. So when you go buy your meat, when you go buy your milk, your eggs, when you go fill up your tank to put gas in your car, when you go to Taco Bell, and I keep, joking about this because I've definitely noticed it. What used to be the dollar menu is no longer the dollar menu. It says paychecks have not even come close to keeping up with inflation. And this has been eviscerating the middle class. Today, the majority of the country is in constant survival mode financially, and that isn't going to change anytime soon. And let me reiterate that anytime the government decides to step in, it exacerbates the situation. It makes it worse. Okay? I was recently listening to Peter Schiff, and he was talking about the student loan crisis, which is there's over $1 trillion in student loan debt. And you wonder why. There's a lot of financial distress amongst recent graduates. Because you end up paying a king's ransom, right? For your college education. And a lot of people And this is not a knock on what people decide to do, but they come out with underwater basket weaving as a degree, and they wonder why they can't find a job. And that's a very blunt way to put it, but it's the reality of it. Especially if you're going to, let's say you get into a prestigious school and you end up coming out with a degree that, doesn't, it really doesn't help your situation, but you still have how many tens of thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. And what he was giving an example, a scenario in which, his father paid his way through college. And for the people whose parents couldn't afford to pay it, they could pay it themselves. And during the summers when they would work, that would help pay for a huge cost of their tuition. But he brought up an interesting point. When politicians started telling students, oh, why don't you borrow the money, take out loans, so then you can enjoy your youth, have fun during the summers, you don't have to work, and once you have a good job, then you can pay it back. Of course, that's going to incentivize people to go and get loans. And not only that, once the government becomes involved and are guaranteeing those loans, well, why wouldn't someone want to service those loans if they know that the government's going to cover that and guarantee it? That's free money for them. So anyways, here we see the Social Security Administration has just released final wage statistics for 2020, and they're extremely alarming. According to the figures that they have given to us, the median wage for 2020 was just 34, a little under 35,000. Okay, that's, in this day and age, you ask yourself, how can you live with 3,000 a month, and that's before taxes? And that's the reality of the situation. It says back in 1960, you could buy an entire house in a nice middle class neighborhood for 34,000. Here it says in 1960, a gallon of gas cost 31 cents. Now, you got to take inflation into account here. But even if you take inflation into account, it's still a lot less than what we're paying today. Similarly, in 1960, a gallon of milk cost $1 per gallon. Currently, the average price of gas and the average price of milk are $3.28 per gallon and $3.68 per gallon, respectively. That's upwards of 958% increase for gas and 268% increase for milk over the last 60 years. And I want to ask you, how much has your wages gone up? Have wages gone up over 900%? If you look at the job you work in, and I want you to tell me if wages have gone up 900%. That's the real question here. Because if wages went up accordingly, I mean, the ratios would stay the same, but you'd just see higher values, if that makes sense. And so, things to keep in mind, because this is getting pretty serious, and I'm showing you guys like the reality of the situation. It's when the rubber meets the road, is that what they say? Where, yeah, I mean, here we see so many people out there are working as hard as they can, and they still can't make ends meet. Can you imagine? And I've given this story before of this channel I was watching. And the guy was talking about how back in high school, he and his then girlfriend, now wife, were working part-time jobs. And they could afford to get an apartment. Nowadays, that's not even possible, not even on a full-time job. Let alone in high school, you can't do it. So folks, a lot of people are living paycheck to paycheck, and some people are using their credit cards to just to stay afloat. So we're in a very dire situation. I thought I'd bring this to you. Like and subscribe. Comment. Let me know what your guys' thoughts are. If you found this video valuable, share with someone else, because it's very valuable information. And it helps people think outside the box a little bit and see the situation for what it really is. So this is the Digital World Podcast, and I'll see you in the next episode.